Yeah, it's a really good question, and the sooner that they figure out an answer to that, the better, because we need the coalition, the Liberal Party, back to the way it was. Let's talk about prominent Yes campaigner Noel Pearson. He has claimed that Peter Dutton lost the election because he didn't support the voice to Parliament, would you believe? He's written in The Australian saying, had he supported the referendum, he would have had the best chance of transforming himself into a supportable Prime Minister. Along with the blackfellas, Dutton is the biggest victim of the failure of the voice, Gary. I mean, these people, they don't move on, do they? And also have still not accepted that 60% of us said no.
Yeah, and in some states even more than that. Look, the simple reality is Australians got it right. If they got it right Saturday a week ago, yesterday a week ago, then they got it right when the voice referendum occurred. Australians are not stupid. Australians don't want division. Australians don't want to see separate treatment for some. That's called apartheid. We don't need that in this country. There's nothing in our rules that treat different racial groups, migrant groups, religious groups differently. There isn't. We're all treated universally before the law, and the voice was a threat to that. It was all about unravelling the fabric of our society, and that's not the sort of Australia anybody wants. So what we need to do is to let Noel have his view, because he's allowed his view. Noel's been seen as credible on things in the past, but I don't think he's doing anything for his own personal credibility by banging on about this. Maybe he's taken lead from Penny Wong saying the whole thing is inevitable. Maybe he feels a bit of courage as a result of a very senior person, some say, who has the control of the strings of the Prime Minister, a senior person in the government actually saying it's inevitable. Maybe he just wants to be written in history as the guy who kept up the fight. I don't know, but it's not good. Australia doesn't need to tear itself apart over this again.
I think you're absolutely right, Gary. I think Senator Wong, with her comments, has emboldened activists like Noel Pearson, and I expect we're going to hear a lot more about this over the next 3 years. I want to talk to you about the Greens. They lost 3 of their 4 lower house seats last week, including that of Leader Adam Bant. Gary, it seems to me the Greens only have a future if they return to focusing on environmental issues. What chance that's going to happen?
And at a time when koalas are being killed by shotgun in Victoria, at a time when koalas are being killed and displaced, putting up wind turbines as they knock down mountains around Lotus Creek in central Queensland, to put up wind turbines and the rubbish that comes from the tops of those hills ends up in creeks which flows into the Great Barrier Reef. Where is the Green activist group? Where is the Green Party? Well, they're too busy trying to fight culture wars about, name it, they're fighting it, and particularly picking the wrong side of a brutal conflict in the Middle East. Look, I think their pro-Palestinian stance lost them a hell of a lot of votes from people who thought they were still tree huggers. Maybe Malcolm Turnbull, if somebody was bold enough to sack him from the Liberal Party, will go and join the Greens, and maybe he'd give them some sort of direction. But at the moment, and that would be another test I'd offer on Tuesday, who's going to get rid of Turnbull? But anyway, that's another story. Look, the Greens have lost their way. They're no longer caring for the environment. They only seem to care about great international and, frankly, communist-conspired causes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a dangerous brand now. Look, we want to ask you about this, Gary. Parents at a private Catholic school in South Australia have voiced their anger after a transgender student broke a number of records competing against girls at a recent sports day. I mean, this student is 13 years old, would you believe? That's a whole separate story. But Gary, look, from my perspective, I just feel like this is yet another reason why, Peter Dutton, the Libs should have come out and made it an actual policy that males cannot compete in female sports. Why is it so hard?
It shouldn't be hard. I got 2 granddaughters and I got a grandson, maybe another one coming soon in the next couple of weeks. Look, in the end, weak men want to compete against women. Mm-hmm. And they put on the skirt and say, I'm a woman now and I want to compete against you. But even weaker men support those people in that kind of decision. We have to stand strongly with women and girls, and a 13-year-old girl is going through enough torture in her circumstances and change and uncertainty to compete on the sporting field and then have a bloke who says, I'm a girl now to win a race or whatever. I think it's disgusting, and somebody's got to stand firmly on the side of women and girls, and real men will, but weak men won't. It's pretty simple.
Perhaps that's another question that could be asked to the leadership contenders on Tuesday, Gary. Appreciate you joining us tonight. Thanks so much.